Welcome back, welcome back. The film The King's Speech has been causing a sensation in the cinema world, with nominations left, right and centre. British actor Colin Firth picked up the Golden Globe Best Actor Award in Hollywood for his portrayal of stammering King George VI. The film's success has of course helped once again to bring that issue of that particular speech impediment back into the open and into the discussion. A man who knows a lot about stammering is Michael Palin, because of course his father had a stammer, but more particularly then, he of course in the 80s he actually did it on stage or indeed on film. Michael played the role of a stammering gangster in the British hit, written by, directed by
Tom Cleese and Charlie Crichton.
Charlie Crichton, those two names that deserve a welcome. Fish Called Wanda. 18 years ago, Michael helped to found the Centre for Stammering Children, and he joins us now here in the studio. Have you seen the film?
I've seen the film, yes, yeah.
Did you like it?
I thought it was excellent, very, very good. I mean, Colin Firth's performance is quite superb because he has to keep up this pressure all the time. But at the same time, it's a very nice, complex performance, and there's humour in it as well, and his relationship with Geoffrey Rush, the speech therapist, is beautifully done without him ever losing, you know, basically what he is, a king, you know, under extraordinary circumstances of a sort of tension, wound up to speak to anybody, let alone the nation, is a problem. So he really does it well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's just take a glimpse of it before coming back to the subject. And this is, in fact, when he's about to give a speech, and a speech at Wembley, and it's the closing speech, and the audience is ready for the speech, waiting and waiting.
I have received from His Majesty the King
And that, very powerful, isn't it? And as you're saying, I mean, that is the tension, presumably, that exists even when someone with a really bad stammer gets started on a speech. They can never be sure that the stammer won't come back.
No, it's like a minefield, I suppose. You just don't know at which point you will be fluent and at which point you'll be tripped up. And I mean, I've seen it in countless people. They suddenly become quite fluent and have a flow, and then up comes something unexpected, an unexpected sort of consonant or a letter which they can't pronounce, and it blocks them again. So it's a very difficult thing to pin down. You just don't know quite when it's going to happen and how bad it's going to be.
And do you know what causes it?
No one really does know what causes it. I mean, there's a lot of research into whether there's actually some sort of problem with connectors in the brain. It's a sort of, some nerves that don't sort of connect, but no one's yet found that out. All they do know is that there are certain children, and quite a lot of them, who start to stammer as soon as they begin to pronounce words at the age of 3 or 4. And so it can bed in very, very early on. And if it's treated in the wrong way, as it was in the film, you know, his father says, "Get on with it, you know, just get over it and speak like anybody else," then of course it can become a real serious neurosis. But if it's treated at that age, which, you know, is the idea of the work that they do at the Stammering Centre, then it can be managed but never cured.
Managed but never cured. And whether it's hereditary or not, we just don't know.
No, they say there is quite a considerable hereditary factor, but I mean, it wasn't true of my family. But
well, no, because I hadn't registered the fact that your father had a heavy stammer. And I mean, did you ever worry that it might visit you?
I didn't actually, no. No, because I didn't know much about it. This was the thing. I just was living with a man who couldn't speak, couldn't say what he wanted to say when he wanted to say it. And we just sort of dealt with it because no one discussed it. There was no doctor he could go to and get a magic pill or a potion. He just seemed to have to suffer it, and that was the way it was, I suppose, when he was growing up. Well,
and the family didn't discuss it, or with him or anything.
No, because it seemed.
Why would you? Yes,
seemed
at that
intrusive,
time.
you know, and it's bad enough him having a stammer and saying, "Why are you stammering?" You know. I did ask my mother once why he stammered, and the only reason she was able to give was that a maid jumped out on him when he was young. Which is, you know, I don't know what kind of euphemism that might be,
no.
but something, I think what she was probably saying was something happened when he was very young. And stammers, that's when stammers do begin. People don't tend to get stammers when they're in their 20s or 30s, as far as I know.
And what about A Fish Called Wanda? That was when you really had to study doing it yourself, which must have been, with the experience you had, a different experience.
Well, I could reproduce it quite easily, I think, just because I was kind of mimicking my father in a way. But I knew that it wasn't just a superficial thing, a comedy device where you go ba 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 da da da. You know, you had to put a character there first, and there had to be some frustration, which is why when, you know, John Cleese created Ken, we created Ken together. We made sure that he was a man who hated the human race because they all bullied him for his stammer. And he loved animals, but of course he ended up murdering the animals rather than the people. And he was a hitman. It wasn't very good. He shot the dogs instead. So there were lots of sort of nice tensions, but there was a lot of humour in it as well. But it was the tension and the character of somebody who has a lot to say but doesn't want to say it to people because he doesn't like the human race. That was a good basis for the stammer.
Yeah. But as the film underlines, I mean, it is a tremendous added pressure then for King George VI, or as he was about to be. I mean, just a tremendous added pressure. I mean, as you were playing the part of Ken, you must have been thinking, well, thank God I don't have this problem myself.
Yes, well, you think if kings don't have problems, always somebody can deal with a king. The great thing is that he was as lonely and as isolated a figure as anyone in the entire, you know, country. And worse, the pressure was ultimate. He had to represent, he had to speak for the nation. And that's the last thing in the film is when he makes the stirring speech at the beginning of the war, you know. He has to speak for the nation and he can't speak. Well, he does manage to.
Well, in the end, yes. And you're embarked on new things at the moment, a new ability to capture every part of your life, I read.
What?
In terms of all your material over the years being available.
Oh God, all the diaries and things like that. Well, I'm actually at the moment I'm trying to do something new and fresh and not go back. And I'm trying to write I'm just in the process of writing a novel, bringing that to an end.
Really?
And then I'm going to do some travelling.
Just for a change?
Well, I haven't been for at least a week.
Yeah. And you've done Sahara next. You visited the Sahara too, haven't you?
I've done the Sahara, yes. I've done deserts, mountain ranges. So next time we're going to Brazil. Just do a nation for one of our programmes about Brazil. I mean, I'd like to keep travelling. So, you know, occasionally I think I'd love to go to southern Russia and all around there. And people say, have you been on the Trans-Siberian Express? And when I say no, they all say, no, you've been around the world, you've been on the Trans-Siberian Express.
The blue train in South Africa.
Oh, that's very nice.
Yes, that's amazing.
That's comfortable.
Only place I've ever imagined where you could actually have a bath on a train. Not a shower, but to have a bath on a train. But do you dream of following Richard Branson into the galactic?
Oh, great unknown. No, I don't dream of following Richard Branson, certainly. No, space actually doesn't particularly interest me. I just want to I think I need to have my feet fairly firmly on the ground.
Well,
and I get a bit of vertigo. I think, out in space must be the ultimate vertigo, mustn't it?
Yeah,
15 miles below you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm full of admiration for people who do it, and people go out to the space station and all that. I think they are doing great work, and I'm fascinated by what they're doing.
And the thought if something goes wrong and they can't get back.
I know, it's always there, exactly. Whereas if you're standing in the middle of the Sahara or something, at least you can walk in a certain
You've
direction.
got a chance. Well, it's a joy to have you with us as ever.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
And Happy New Year.
Week or two late, but Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Well, yeah, exactly. It's only 2 weeks, isn't it? 3 weeks?
Yeah, exactly.
There we go.
Michael Palin there. Now, the birth of a new country. An awesome thought, but it's imminent. That will be confirmed when the referendum votes are counted in southern Sudan, where it's believed its 10 million population has probably voted overwhelmingly to break away from the rest of Sudan in north. The many problems that lie ahead are mirrored in one particular region, Abyei. It bridges the north and the south. It has a population split between northern and southern tribes, and it was exempt from the referendum with special administrative status. And joining me now is Mr. Dirdiri Mohamed Ahmed, the Sudanese government's chief negotiator on Abyei. Welcome
Thank you.
to you. And also it's welcome to Arop Madut Arop, who is the MP, the Member of Parliament for Abyei in the Parliament of the Southern Sudan. And we welcome you both. Let me start with you, just a prefacing vote, which is not just about Abyei, but about the whole thing. Here we are in the situation where the vote is not going to, the result of the vote is in southern Sudan is not about it to be officially released, but the general impression, talking to colleagues of yours and talking around the place and so on, is that you have a pretty clear picture, do you, as the negotiator, of the way the vote has gone?
Oh yes, it's very clear that the Southerners are overwhelmingly now preferring secession.
You've had a tremendous number of warful years over the past 50 years. Do you think the peace that exists for the past year or more, that will stay if in fact the South decide to go separately? Do you think there will still be peace?
That was exactly the message President Bashir conveyed to the southern populace and to the international community during his historic and landmark visit of the 4th of January, that's to say just 5 days before the conduct of the referendum. He made it very clear that the referendum will end up making the decision of the Southerners announced, and whatever decision the Southerners might take, we will live with them in peace, whether they are going to be part of the Sudan or neighbors to the Sudan. We had also signed with the SPLM, or rather agreed with the SPLM on a framework that has been moderated by former President Thabo Mbeki on the North-South relation beyond the referendum. That framework stipulates very clearly that the relation between the South and the North shall be peaceful. All outstanding problems, Abyei included, shall be resolved with that spirit.
And are you confident too that if the South votes to go it alone, not with the North, do you think the North will be peaceful and the South will be peaceful?
Despite the fact that the two parties have agreed not to go to war again. But in this particular, where there is some kind of cheating, it is difficult to avoid triggering a fight. For instance, by July there will be no CPA, Comprehensive Peace Agreement. By July there will be no constitution, government of national unity. By July there will be practically two separate states. Now, where will you put the people of Abyei who are administratively a part of Southern Sudan? They fought the war and they are there settled. Can we just be left alone because of the nomads, those who come just to drink the area, to make use of the area? Can we be left out without responding, We are human beings and we have been 50 years suffering. So I don't think that it will be a peaceful solution. There would be an alternative. Either we make internal self-determination, where we decide we have to be administered in the south, or if the two countries have split, then we go to The Hague again for further arbitration. And I think it is arbitration, through arbitration, that we may avoid triggering a fight between the two parts of the Sudan.
What do you think will be the situation, Dirdiri, in terms of oil, and both because the north, while it doesn't have the oil that the south has, nevertheless the north provides invaluable assistance to the south in marketing the oil and so on. And do you think that will work?
Yes, this is yet another reason why the south and the north shall not fight. The oil is being produced in the south and pumped through the north to be exported via Port Sudan port, which is in the north. If there is war, there is fighting, it's not only the south or the north who will suffer. Both of them will suffer, and definitely the oil is right now contributing sizably and immensely to the budgets of both parts of the country. We have to cooperate in order to see to it that the oil will continue being pumped out to Port Sudan.
The south is ready to share it 50 or 40 for a number of years. But the problem is that the National Congress is not sure of the south, is not sure of its survival in the north, and worried. And therefore, he's trying to hold Abyei hostage, so that the south make concessions. But the south has already made concessions in a very elaborate letter, which they said, we will have soft borders, there will be no visas, there will be only passes based on the European practice, and therefore, don't worry, we are still Sudanese. The fact that we are breaking away doesn't mean that we will roll the southern Sudan and carry it away. We will still be neighbors, and therefore, please let us share. It is sharing which they are not being convinced that we are serious.
Well, thank you both for this discussion. You've both been very, very clear in what you were saying and so on, and we hope that the peace that seems there for the taking will be taken by the north and the south, and that people will start to use the phrase in connection with the Sudan, phrases about peace and goodwill toward men. Thank you both very much indeed. Thank you. It's not a job you'd take if you want to be loved and admired. Opinion surveys these days tend to rank bankers somewhere between politicians, estate agents and journalists in public esteem. It's not hard to see why. After taking government bailout cash, many bankers are now taking huge salaries and bonuses while refusing to lend much money to borrowers. Last week, one of the biggest bankers, Bob Diamond, the brilliant head of the huge Barclays Bank, declared that the time for banker remorse was over. But is it? Were they ever really remorseful about the bailouts, or did they just take the cash and carry on? I'm joined now by that rarity in the publishing world, rarer even than a remorseful banker, a best-selling economist. Will Hutton is here. Will Hutton of the Work Foundation. Is the moment for the bankers now to say remorse is over, or have they really done enough remorse, or should they do more remorse? Have they escaped?
Remorse is such a interesting concept. Sorrowfulness. I mean, my own view is that we confront a banking world that is dysfunctional, ongoingly dysfunctional. You can't pay these huge bonuses. I mean, and they're astonishingly high, these bonuses. JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, Barclays and Barcap, that's the investment banking arm of Barclays Bank. I mean, the bonuses are run into millions of dollars at a time actually when the investment banks haven't done terribly well, some of them. And you can only pay that kind of money if you're making super profits. And the way that you make super profits in any industry is when the market is rigged in some way, when you've managed to fix things. And the way it's fixed in banking is that money is exceptionally cheap. There's very little competition. There's embedded conflicts of interest throughout actually the banking model, and that permits these profits to be made and the bonuses to be paid. And bankers, I think, have a tremendous sense of entitlement now. You know, they got through it. No one lost any money. The creditors didn't lose any money. Depositors didn't lose any money. You know, and it's business as usual. And I think the time for remorse is not over. I think the time actually for turning up the wick on these gentlemen has arrived.
And why is there this general feeling that nobody seems to dispute very much that they shouldn't have to reveal exactly what the huge sum they got was?
Well, I mean, I think that we live in an era of transparency. I mean, you know, WikiLeaks. I mean, you've covered it here. The government, the British government, the coalition government, is anxious that every employee over 50,000, making more than £55,000 a year, should disclose their salary and who they are. We already know the 9,000 public officials who make more than the British Prime Minister. That's a salary of more than 142,500. And the idea that you can have this in the public realm, and at the same time banks who depend upon either explicitly through bailouts or having been bought or having stakes taken in them by the British government and indeed by the American government in the States, or require at the moment the interbank market, which is the heart of the kind of banking model, which has got government guarantees to make sure it functions. They need government. The fact that they're not going to disclose their salaries is, I think, when they're over £1 million a year, or you know, is an impossible position to hold. And I think we are going to have to move, and we will move over the years ahead to more transparency in private sector salaries in banking. And
we keep hearing this phrase about various banks are too big to fail. Now, there's two interpretations of that. One could be that they're just so big that that it's a problem and so on. Or does it mean that they're too big to be allowed to fail because it's damaging? I mean, what in the end is the phrase "too big to fail" mean? That they should be saved, or that they don't need to be saved?
Well, in a perfect world, you know, you'd hope to live in an economy where, if a particular bank got itself into trouble, it could be allowed to go bust, and the creditors would lose money, the shareholders would lose money, and the managers would be kicked out of their jobs. And that's a form of accountability in capitalism. The trouble is, if you allow a Royal Bank of Scotland in Britain, or you allow a Lloyds Bank to go, or in America, Citigroup or Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, to go bust these days, it brings down everybody else.
Well, that's the problem. Like Lehman Brothers being a case in the States, where they let Lehman Brothers go down, and everybody says that doubled the size of the crisis.
Well, it probably, I mean, doubled, I mean, trebled, quadrupled it. I mean, actually, if Lehman's had held, the banking crisis in 2008 would have undoubtedly been less acute. But Lehman's was an enormous bank. I mean, it had $1 trillion of liabilities. It was an enormous, enormous bank. It wasn't big by the standards of the United States economy, but it was a huge organization. And more than that, it had a tiny amount of capital supporting all this leverage that it had, and the assets that it held, we now know they thought were, you know, that they'd arrived at a new alchemy, that actually you could construct special purpose vehicles, structured investment vehicles, collateralized debt obligations, where although the individual components of them were very risky, the whole was more than the sum of the parts. It was less risky. We now know that to be complete and total nonsense, that alchemy didn't work. And there was Lehman with these alleged products that were the new alchemy, with this enormous amount of leverage and tiny amount of capital, $1 trillion, bang. And, you know, we can't allow that. I mean, it's the knock-on effects on the rest of American citizens and you know, actually, you know, Western capitalism was just too acute.
Thank you very much indeed, Will. That was great. And I dare say watching now, there's some out there somewhere, there are many bankers, and perhaps one of them will come and volunteer to join us, and we'll reunite you. And
they can reunite me with them, and they can you know, fight back.
How do you want to be paid? With a check? Thank you. Thank you very much indeed to Will, the one and only Will Hutton. Thank you for watching. See you next week.